Namastasye, 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 namo. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. We'll just wait a few moments as a few more women come into the space. And I want to invite you to grab a notebook and pen because we will be starting today with a journaling prompt. Mahamaye Mangali Namastasye, 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 namo. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to those of you just coming in. We will start very shortly, and I'm just inviting you to grab a pen and paper, pen and notebook, as we'll be starting with a journaling prompt today. Okay, beautiful. Welcome, everybody. It's so lovely to see you all once again for our final session of Daily Habits Magic. I'm so happy to be here with you all. Let us begin with our invocation to the goddess. So just for a moment, gently close down your eyes. Become truly present. Take a few deeper breaths. O radiant divine mother, you shine through every realm, celestial, earthly, and the depths unseen. You are fierce as Kali, gentle as Lalita, generous as Lakshmi, and wise as Saraswati. Mother of all names, yet beyond all names, we bow to you again and again. Please bless us all with your kindness and abundance. Namaste. So once again, welcome. We're going to dive right in this morning to a journaling practice. I'd love to drop into a little reflection time, and I'm going to share a reading with you as well. Our focus this morning is on the practice of Bhakti, or the practice of devotion, wise love, as that which can transform our everyday habits and routines. So I have two prompts for you. I'll pop them in the chat. The first prompt: what is one ordinary action in my daily life that I could transform into a devotional practice? What is one ordinary action in my daily life that I could transform into a devotional practice? And it might also be a reflection on something you already do. So perhaps there are already mundane, ordinary tasks in your life to which you bring an element of devotion, and you could certainly journal about that for sure. And then the second prompt: how does bringing devotion into my routines change the way I experience them. So you might choose to reflect on times where you have more of a devotional element in the way that you approach your daily tasks, and then other times when that falls by the wayside, and what the difference in feeling tone is between those two qualities. So the prompts are in the chat. I'm going to give you a few moments to journal and reflect in your own time now. What is one ordinary action in my daily life that I could transform into a devotional practice? And how does bringing devotion into my daily life and my routines change the way I experience them? And as you continue to journal and reflect, I'm going to share with you a short reading from my book, Trust Life, Trust Yourself, Find Peace. This is one of the books in the giveaway, which I'm pleased to say many of you have entered. So I'll be drawing a winner for that this afternoon, the other book being Everyday Ayurveda. Bhakti is living devotion. Bhakti manifests as seeing the sacred in your home, in your child, in all animals, and in the earth. We live our bhakti through service to each other. Ultimate bhakti is between you and your God. The surrender and grace of bhakti may be attained by all, regardless of gender, race, or class. Your spirit soul holds a little spark of God within it. We could even say that the spirit or the soul of every human is a spark of God. Some of us are closer to the original source than others and feel a stronger pull, whereas others experience a weaker connection. It is like the source, what we might call God, is a large magnet, and each individual human spirit soul, a little chipping shaved off from the main magnet, and all the chippings are laid out on a table. The filings very close will be attracted to the main magnet and stick on easily and quickly. It may even be difficult to remove them. Those a tiny bit further out feel a strong pull or attraction, and it would only take a little nudge for them to make it home to the main magnet. The filings on the edge of the table don't feel the pull and have a long journey to make towards being attracted, but they are nonetheless made of the same material. So what gets us a closer position on the table? Over time, being responsible for all our actions and living in integrity, as well as skillful in thought, word, and deed, will work. And this is the process of bhakti, accelerated through spiritual practice. Many religions and traditions have questioned why we experience this predicament of disconnection from the divine. Why are we separated? Why do we need to find our way back home to God? And while explanations differ, both Christianity and the Bhakti tradition explain our separation using the concept of free will, which is integral to our ability to choose love and to choose God's grace. The magic of connection is only magic if it is of our own choosing and response to the longing that is felt due to the separation. So I realize that this might sound a little bit esoteric in a discussion about our daily habits, but for me, this is actually at the absolute core of what our daily habits are all about. And when I was reflecting on what I wanted to share with you in this third session of Daily Habits Magic, I was thinking about Śrīla Prabhupāda, who is the Bengali, the Indian guru who brought the teachings of Krishna and particularly of Bhakti to the West in the 1960s. He's the founder of the Hare Krishna movement, or ISKCON as it's sometimes known. And there are many different gurus and teachers that came from India to the West in that particular historical period. I guess we could call it the hippie era. But I particularly love and appreciate Srila Prabhupada's efforts and teachings. For me, they feel particularly resonant. One of the reasons I feel that way is that he is one of the very few gurus for whom meeting Western culture did not go in any way to his head. So many of those gurus came from a very traditional Indian background and lineage. And when they came to the West, they got very enamored with our material life. And some of them started buying lots of Rolls Royces and gold watches and mansions, and some of them became sexually predatory because they were not used to the way that we're more free in our sexuality in Western culture. And so actually it's really sad that many of those gurus and teachers actually became quite tainted by our Western culture. And that's really heartbreaking for the people that were followers and devotees of those teachers. But Srila Prabhupada really has a very clean record. I mean, there's no stories or records that ever show that he was in any way greedy, materialistic, a perpetrator, anything other than a truly devout spiritual man. There's another part to his story that I really, really love and find very uplifting, which is that his guru asked him, because he was educated, Srila Prabhupada was educated in English language. So not everybody back then could speak English and understood Western culture, but he went to an English school. Obviously, India was colonized by the British. And he went to an English school and he learned very old-fashioned, sort of Victorian-esque English language. And so his guru, when he was quite a young man, he was a newly married man, and he actually ran a sort of Ayurvedic pharmacy. That was his profession. His guru said to him, I really want you to go to the Western countries, to go to the United States of America and Europe and spread this word of bhakti, of kirtan, of loving devotion, and of sincere connection to and seeking for God, which of course Srila Prabhupada called Krishna. But the name is really not important. Krishna is the manifestation of the divine or the manifestation of God that comes in the form of our best friend. So we see in the story of the Bhagavad Gita that Arjuna, who is an ordinary man, has a conversation with Krishna, who is God, in the form of his best friend. And the whole of this text, Bhagavad Gita, is that exchange. It's this conversation between human, man, woman, and God, Krishna, in the form of the wise counselor, the caring confidant, the friend. And of course, we can look for other and engage with other manifestations of God, the divine goddess, the feminine divine, Shakti. We spoke in our first session about Lakshmi as the lamp in the darkness. This is another way of thinking about this idea of God. The energy of God, the idea of the divine is so abstract and so hard for us to kind of grasp as human beings that for me personally, I found it very useful to have a few different archetypes that I can connect to at different times and in different ways, depending on what's going on for me. So, the Lakshmi archetype is very helpful as the householder, the mother, the woman that is, looking after a lot of children and running a home. The Krishna archetype is very useful for me in moments when I feel vulnerable and perhaps lonely or afraid about the future, this idea of God in the form of the best friend is very reassuring, and so on. And most world religions recognize that we need different archetypes. For example, in Christianity, we may be in relationship with Jesus, which perhaps is a nice Krishna analogy, we could say, because Jesus is the human form of God. So again, God in the form of the best friend. We might resonate with Mother Mary or Mary Magdalene if we're looking for a more feminine, divine feminine form. And so my personal feeling is that many of these teachings translate very nicely across different religions and different schools of thoughts and different belief systems. Anyway, so back to Srila Prabhupada, his guru asked him, because he could speak English language and read and write, please go to the West and share these teachings. They desperately need them. They really need our help. They need the teachings of Bhakti. The culture is becoming more and more consumerist, capitalist, all of these things. And so actually, what happened was at that time, Prabhupada felt unable to travel and unable to leave his family. He was a fairly young man and he had a lot of responsibilities. He had children and a wife and a business, and he didn't really feel that it was appropriate or possible to pack up his bags and head off to the unknown Western world. He'd never left India. And preach somehow these teachings of Krishna, to the world. It felt preposterous that he could even consider that. However, he then, went through his life and he supported his family, and he got to the point where he was an elder. His children had grown and left home, and he no longer was running a business. He was essentially retiring, and he remembered his guru's request. It had stayed with him, that thread, throughout his whole life. And by this time, he was truly devoted to the path of Krishna and to chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And he was a very religious man. You could almost say he was heading into a monastic phase of life, like almost becoming like a monk. And I guess, I'm imagining this now, but I guess he would have perhaps felt that he had a choice, that he could either kind of live out the rest of his years peacefully in Bengal, in India, and, kind of relax and worship Krishna and reap the fruits of his life, which is really what retirement and elderhood in an ideal world is all about. Or, and this is where he felt this kind of burning desire to do what his guru had asked, he could attempt to become a preacher and spread the teachings. It's a very long story, and it's a very, very beautiful story. And it's one of my favorite uplifting stories. Whenever I feel that I have a lot on my plate, or I feel that there is hardship in my life, I love to remember the story of Prabhupada coming to the West, because no hardship that I've experienced in my life is anything close to that. I will put a couple of book recommendations into our notes for those of you that are interested in this story. There are several books that were written by devotees of Śrīla Prabhupāda that outline this early history of the Hare Krishna movement and of his life. And as I say, I find them incredibly interesting and uplifting. So I'll give you some book recommendations for those of you who are interested. But the short version is, and I encourage you to study and read and learn about the long version, because it's really uplifting and inspiring. The short version is, he didn't have much money. He managed to raise funds for a ship to take him to New York City. He chose New York because it was one of the few American cities he had heard of. The ship ended up being a cargo ship, not a passenger ship. So he was one of just a handful of people on the ship that weren't crew. He almost died on that passage. He had 2 heart attacks during the passage over from India. And we still have, so precious, we still have his diaries from that time where he's on the boat heading over. He's in his early 70s at this point, heading over from India into the complete unknown with barely a penny to his name. He had a small bag of rice and a copy of the Bhagavad Gita and a few coins, and that was literally it. And he writes in his diary, immediately after having had one of the heart attacks that he suffered, you know, Krishna, if it's time for you to take me now, take me now. I'm fine with that. Like almost, you can almost hear in his words that he's kind of like, I'd almost rather go. It feels like a little bit of a stretch for me to be on this mission. Like I'm happy to surrender and, you know, come back to Godhead now, like be released from this physical body. But that was not his path. He arrived in New York with very little money, and he ended up essentially living for a number of weeks as pretty much a homeless person. Like he ended up living in squats and living in, you know, sort of hippie houses where he was not afforded any particular respect or admiration because he just really had nowhere else to go. And then slowly over time, he started what became the Hare Krishna movement, and a few early devotees learnt chanting, learnt scripture, learnt about the Bhagavad Gita, learnt the teachings of Krishna, learnt about things like karma and dharma and reincarnation, and a movement was founded that still today millions of people practice and has temples all over the world. There's a beautiful temple here in Sydney. There's a big temple in Melbourne. And one of the other things that I really appreciate about the ISKCON teachings, or the Hare Krishna teachings, which were founded by Śrīla Prabhupāda, is they were specifically founded on the idea of inviting Western people into Vedic teachings and the teachings of Krishna. So this entire movement, the Hare Krishna movement, is our invitation to take on these teachings, to understand them and to make them relevant in our lives. And that was his entire mission. So whenever I worry about things like cultural appropriation, or I feel, you know, in all honesty, sometimes I just feel like it's a bit weird, this longing and this interest that I have in yogic teachings in India. And I'm noticing at the moment there's a really strong trend for a lot of people to move back to Christianity, which is my birthright religion. And I sometimes think, you know, wouldn't it be more culturally appropriate for me to explore Christianity, which I have done. I've made a big study in my life of all different world religions. It's been my fascination for a long time. But the honest truth from my heart to yours, the truth of the matter is, I have never found in any teachings anywhere else from any religion or any school of thought a framework that explains the meaning of life and our purpose for being here more clearly than these Vedic teachings. To me, it is the only path that actually makes sense. I don't believe personally, and I'm very open to others' perspectives and points of view, but I don't believe that it's as polarizing as heaven and hell, for example, or that those that haven't heard of the teachings of Jesus Christ are automatically damned to hell. That doesn't fit in my way of seeing the world. And the Vedic teachings, the teachings of Krishna, the teachings of yoga make sense to me, that what will happen to us as we move through our lives is a direct result of the way that we behave, the way that we think, the way that we speak, the way that we show up. You know, it makes sense to me that this is how we are judged. And I also love, and it's a little bit cheeky, but I love that Hinduism or these teachings overall embrace all other religions and schools of thought. So, you know, the way that Hindus see it, for example, is that Jesus Christ is an avatar of Vishnu. Now, a lot of Christians don't like that, so don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying everyone's happy, but it's very open. Like it really is choose your own adventure. Find the goddess, find the god, find the version of spirituality that resonates for you. And in that, find the bhakti. So for me, bhakti yoga could be the worship of Mother Mary. It could be the worship of a beautiful tree or a river or a mountain. It could be the worship of Krishna. It could be Lakshmi. It could be the light in your child's eyes. It's just about finding something beyond our small egoic, I was going to say pathetic, which sounds really harsh. I'm not saying that any of us are pathetic, but if all we care about is our own tiny lives, that little ant on the leaf that I was talking about the other day, we are not going to find the true joy, the true nectar in life. We're just not going to find it because it's not in the experience of shopping and material gain and even in intellect. It's not even in the experience of intellect, it's in the experience of surrender, devotion, and the seeing of something higher. And that is the invitation of bhakti. And it really, really is that simple. Shay is saying in the chat that the invitation piece is really helpful for her and really timely. And me too. I sometimes think about the great effort that Prabhupada went to over and over again and the many hardships that he experienced for us, literally us, like, you know, people raised in Western culture, living in Western countries, to have access to these teachings. And it's a very helpful reminder that I am invited and that there is a place for us here. And also that we can take these teachings and make them our own, and that is absolutely acceptable. Yoga is a living, breathing tradition. Ayurveda is a living, breathing tradition. It's not set in stone. And many of the scriptures say many times over, it is our job to make these teachings appropriate for us and to interpret them in a way that works for us. We are actually not just invited, but told to do that. There's a beautiful piece of scripture in the Pali Canon, which is one of the Buddhist scriptures, that says the Buddha uses the analogy of testing gold. He says, if you take gold to a jeweler, the jeweler doesn't just go, oh, that looks like good gold, and give you money for it. They test it first. They do, I don't know what tests they do, how soft is it, how, whatever. They know, or a diamond, you know, they know how to test the quality of the gold, test the quality of the gemstone. And the Buddha says, in the same way, you should test your own belief systems. We should test yoga. We should test Ayurveda. We should be in a process of experimentation and curiosity and looking at, does this work for me? And this is where the rigid, prescriptive, masculine mode of do this, do that, do this, do that is not, it's not helpful for us. This is not how we're meant to be doing these teachings. Yes, discipline is required. Yes, sometimes even what we call tapas or austerity is required. Those are absolutely part of the path. But it should feel deeply aligned and deeply resonant and deeply like, you know, in your guts that this is the path for you. And if that's not where you're at, then really we have to go back to curiosity. We have to go back to asking the questions. We have to go back to self-investigation. And some of us really desire, this is kind of an interesting piece in the whole question, we desire to be told what to do, right? Sometimes it's really nice to be told what to do, for someone to say, these are the rules. And in the Hare Krishna movement, the movement that Śrīla Prabhupāda brought to the West, he did give us rules. So the basic rules that he gave were, don't take intoxicating substances, don't take mind-altering substances, work on altering your mind through your own mental faculty, not through alcohol, drugs, even some say caffeine. So that's one piece. He also said, don't get enticed by gambling. Don't, and I actually have contemplated this a lot. So gambling is the way that it's described. But I think what he's really saying here is that my interpretation is, don't think that you can have a big, exciting windfall that will fix everything. In other words, spiritual life is hard work, right? There is no lottery win. You don't get to just suddenly, you know, take a risk and everything is perfect. You're actually just working with your karma and you're working with your hard work. And it's a diligent, slow and steady process. So we're not in a lottery here. We're not hoping for some great big win that's going to change everything. We're just slowly, diligently working through the experience of being human. He also requested that we don't eat meat and that we follow a vegetarian diet, because he recognized that animals experience great suffering, and that they are here for us to care for, not to utilize. So vegetarian diet is a big part of the teachings. And we are invited to practice monogamy, or at the very least sexual non-manipulation, what we might call brahmacharya. So we're not using our sexuality to be manipulative or to get what we want, or just purely for kind of hedonistic pleasure. That there is a sense of sanctity and a sense of, again, bhakti, devotion, applied to our experience of ourselves as sexual beings. So we see sexual acts and ourselves as sexual as part of the reflection of God's grace, and not something that we can just kind of frivolously waste, I guess you could say. So those were some rules that we were given in this particular movement. And that can be helpful. It can be really helpful to have parameters and containers. But if we get too fixated on the desire for rules and we want someone else externally to tell us what to do, I mean, this is how people end up in cults, right? Actually, what happens is we lose our own sense of autonomy and we lose our own sense of self-direction. And in my experience, bhakti falls apart at this point, because it's exactly as I read in that short extract from my book. It is required that we are choosing this path. In order for the benefits to unfold, it is required that we choose the path of bhakti. We don't, it's not somehow imposed upon us. It has to come from within, because it's a longing to return back to the divine. And in that yearning, in that longing, is personal autonomy. There is choice. Another person can't make you yearn for something or long for something. They can make you follow rules and restrictions and protocols, but the mood of bhakti, the feeling of the yearning and the desire to be closer to, I'm using the word God, but I think you guys understand by now, I mean that in the broadest possible sense, comes from ourselves. It comes from ourselves. And the biggest struggle that we have, all of us, is that our culture, our entire culture that we live in, is not oriented with this yoga, this bhakti, this desire to remember God in the center. We worship the gods of material possession. We worship the gods of ego. We worship the gods of success and credibility and visibility and fame and fortune. And almost every religion in the entire world, almost every spiritual discipline tells us that these are empty gods. These are empty idols. They will lead to nothing but more desire and pain and suffering. And so when we can remember that, and yeah, like Sita is saying, worshipping is very transactional these days. Absolutely. And we can even come to Krishna in that way. You know, many people pray in that way, like, give me this, and then I'll do that. You know, it shouldn't be this way. It should really be a practice of absolute service, absolute surrender. And I'm speaking right now as if I've nailed this and I've kind of got it all worked out. And that is absolutely not the case. It is every day a work in practice. And, you know, some days are easier than others, and some days the alignment is greater than others. And sometimes I feel I get drawn into material world and I get drawn into these external markers, and other times on a good day, I feel really quite disgusted by them. And I look at the world and I feel great sadness for the way that we are living. But what I do know is that change is possible, and that these teachings, for me personally at least, have held great power. And to bring it full circle back to this daily habits idea, the reason I shared the whole story about Prabhupada, and this is kind of, I hope, connects the dots for you. There was an interview with Śrīla Prabhupāda, the gentleman, the guru who brought the Hare Krishna movement to the West. And someone asked him, how do you manage your time? You're so busy. You're translating Bhagavad Gita. You are traveling all over the world, opening temples. You're giving talks in, you know, Parliament and all these, you know, he ended up running a multi-million-dollar international, like, huge movement. How do you find the time? How do you manage your time to still eat well, sleep well, chant your mantra, do your, you know, devotional practices? It's almost like he made time elastic. And I think the person who was asking the question was hoping for some sort of scheduling advice, right? But actually what Prabhupada said, very, very clear, and it's in your workbook. I'll go back to the notes in the workbook because I put it in there for you. He said that true time management isn't about efficiency for its own sake, but it is about aligning every moment with devotional purpose. Spiritual progress and external responsibilities go hand in hand, but our focus must remain on serving Krishna or the divine fully, waking early, practicing discipline, and engaging spirituality throughout our waking days. Sadhana, or spiritual practice, is not separate from our daily life. Every act, when performed with the right consciousness, can be a devotional service. And then my own notes I added, in Navaratri, we especially celebrate the goddess. Devotion can be directed towards any form of the divine. So I hope this gives you some food for thought around, it's not just about what you're doing every day and how you're structuring your time. And particularly if you've got a little bit stuck on this idea that Ayurveda or yoga means a certain set of protocols that you have to follow almost dogmatically, all it really is about is bringing the mood of bhakti into your daily life. And sure, we can refine our daily habits, and I've definitely done that over the years. I've made lots of choices that align me with a more Ayurvedic way of living, without any doubt. But the biggest shift, or the most helpful advice, I guess we could say, is to try to live in devotion, to try to live in such a way that really puts this practice of bhakti at the very front. So I'd love to open up to your thoughts around this and any questions that you might have. I'm really open to hear your questions about anything that we've covered over the last 3 days. And I would also love, if you feel called, if anyone wants to share in the chat your journaling reflections. So if there was anything that came up when we did that short journaling prompt at the beginning of today's session, please pop it in the chat. It would be lovely to hear from you. And feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question, comment, thought that you would like to share. Please go ahead and do that now. Peter is saying that she struggles to wake up early. I understand. Honestly, it's so simple and it's ridiculously obvious for me to say it, but it's just the truth. It's easier to get up early if you go to bed early. I know that sounds ridiculously obvious, but it's just that simple.
Hi,
You're always going to
Katie.
struggle to get up early if you're tired.
Hi, Katie. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so I do go to bed early, but it's just me that I simply cannot wake up before 7. So I lose all this precious time that wanting to do what I really would love to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the evening, obviously, you don't have all that, I would say the most, the vibrant energy to sink in. So morning is the best time. Yeah.
I definitely agree with you. I find my energy for spiritual practice in particular is much, much better in morning than evening, which is why I choose to go to bed early and get up early rather than the other way around. Is your constitutional type, your dominant constitutional type kapha? Do you know?
Now, I think it is the fire.
Pitta.
Yeah. Uh, I don't know. Probably I don't know. This is one of my struggle that really, really struggle.
And what time do you go to bed?
9:30 to 10.
Oh, it's early. It's plenty of sleep. Okay. Well, I mean, here's what I would say. This is another trick or a little hack that you can try, is just getting up a little bit earlier each day incrementally. So if, let's say you're getting up at 7, but you would like it to be 6, instead of changing to 6, maybe start with 6:50. Do that for a few days, and then 6:40, 6:30, and just gradually shave it back a little bit and see how you go with that. That can be quite helpful. Another option is when you wake up, you can do an energizing practice. Like, for example, you can do Kapalabhati, which is like the breath of fire, the very strong inhale, exhale. And if you do that, my teacher used to call that the yogi's cup of coffee. So instead of drinking caffeine, we do Kapalabhati, and it's called shining skull pranayama practice, or kriya. it really brings a lot of energy into the body. So you could try something that is energizing, like that type of practice straight away when you wake up. But first thing I would try is incrementally bringing the morning waking time a little bit earlier.
Thank you, Katie. I also came across someone in the podcast saying that one of the other trick that I haven't tried, they asked me to try. I mean, this person, the podcast is wake up early and sit on the sofa and do nothing. So I think I would try that. I would give it a go.
Sitting up is good because it does wake you up a lot more than lying down. So if I notice for myself, if I wake up and I lounge around in bed for any amount of time, it makes me feel lazy and slower. If I get up and I do my rituals and I light my candles and I just kind of open up the house for the day, then I start to feel the energy, and then I can come to meditation or some other practice with a lot more clarity. So I do think, I mean, what I do is I get up, get out of bed, and then I come back to bed. I do some of my sadhana in bed, which I enjoy. I don't like have a shower and get dressed and all of that because that feels a bit full on for like 5:30 in the morning. But I do get up and do a few things so I feel fully awake before I come back. So the sitting on the sofa maybe is a good example of that.
Thank you.
I'm wishing you luck with it.
Thank you.
Stacey's saying that she added brushing her dog, which she often feels is a chore, but doing it with devotion changes the whole experience. I love that. When my children were a little bit younger, I don't have kids in nappies anymore, but I used to really try to think about changing nappies as a devotional practice. Like anything that we do that is, you know, not your favorite thing, but just has to be done anyway. These are where we have such a special opportunity to find the bhakti in our lives. Anything that feels monotonous, repetitive, tedious, there's a lot of those things in our lives very often. It's like, can we just pause and take a moment to do it with a sense of devotion? And one of the keys that I find for that, one of the ways that really unlocks that capacity is gratitude. Like for example, again and again and again, when I'm making dinner for my kids in the evening, and sometimes it's just, it's a chore, I just think to myself, I am so fortunate that I get to open my fridge, open my cupboards, and they're full of food. Like, how incredible. Like, I mean, this is really truly what I think, and I'm not saying this to shame anyone in any way, but I genuinely think to myself, how dare I have the thought that I can't be bothered to make dinner? Like, honestly, let me do this with grace and love, because we know that there are many, many mothers right now and fathers on this planet who cannot feed their children. So what a gift. Yeah, like there is so much suffering in the world. And when we can remember our own privilege and joy, it really, for me, it helps me bring the bhakti into my life. And it's not about guilt and shame. It's just about acknowledgement of my great, great privilege. Shirley is saying that asana and meditation can be her devotional practice. Having the devotional thinking in the practice brings in more softness and lets go of ego. Absolutely. My teacher, Sharon Gannon, has said many times over the years, asana practice in particular amplifies your whatever it is you're thinking about. So if you're doing your asana practice, for example, in a yoga class with other people, and you're spending the whole time comparing yourself with others or pushing really hard and being really competitive, actually the asana practice is going to amplify that experience. Isn't that wild? Some of you have heard this story before. I'll just tell it very briefly, but I used to live in a house share with a guy many years ago who was a very accomplished Ashtanga yoga practitioner, like really, did several hours of practice every day and had a very advanced asana practice. And this guy, he was just my housemate. He was one of the most angry people I've ever met in my life. Like, he just had an anger management problem. He was constantly in a strop, like I remember one day he was trying to do something on a computer with a printer and the printer didn't work, and he got the printer and he threw it, and he was aggressively like pulling all the wires. And I was in my early 20s at this point, and I remember thinking, I feel like yoga's really not working out for this guy. Like he's doing a lot of yoga and somehow it's really not working for him. And then I came across this teaching that whatever you're bringing to your yoga, gets amplified. And I remember, because we had a communal yoga space in our house, and I remember whenever I watched him practice, even his asana practice was angry, you know, it was like he was fighting his own body in asana. I will get my leg behind my head. I will balance on one arm. I'm fighting through it. Guess what? That energy, because the practice of asana amplifies, it makes it bigger. If your energy is all about hating your body and fighting your body, asana is not going to really help you very much. The mindset that we bring in, the bhakti, gets expanded. So if every time we bow down from Tadasana into Uttanasana and we energetically see that movement of folding forward as a surrendering, a bowing down, a humbling, that is the energy that will be amplified. So I completely agree. When we consciously bring the bhakti into the asana practice, it becomes a beautiful, beautiful expression of our devotion. And when we don't, not so much. Yeah, Sally's saying she would love to bring more devotion into cooking for her family so it becomes an act of love instead of a chore. Slowly, slowly, you know, as a practice. And I think really even just that reframe, I know in my own life, of seeing it as a spiritual practice has been really helpful for me. It really does. And, you know, again, there will be days when it's like, this is just tedious and my family are ungrateful and, you know, I'm going to order pizza. Like, I am not for a minute saying that doesn't happen in my life, because it does. But I do find the reframe really helpful. Another one for me, some of you've heard me mention this before, is folding laundry. You can imagine in my home, I've got 5 children. My youngest is 3. My older 2 are both apprentice mechanics. There's a lot of mechanic karma in my family. I don't know why. My father was a mechanic. My ex-husband's a mechanic. Now 2 of my older boys are mechanics. I said to my 3rd boy recently, what do you want to be when you grow up? We were having a whole conversation. I said, please don't say mechanic. Let's try and be more creative. Let's think of some other options. But anyway, lots of dirty clothes because they get really dirty at work and they get sweaty, and I have a lot of washing. And it is not my favorite. I quite like cooking. I do not enjoy folding multiple loads of laundry every day. But I really try to, and I've been doing this for many years, use it as I often listen to podcasts, so I try to use it as time that I can also be kind of multitasking in a good way. And I, you know, fold the laundry while I'm listening to something that I'm interested in, so that helps. But I also fold up their clothes. And again, I think my beautiful children, my healthy children, you know, what a blessing that they have a home and they have parents that love them and that these clothes belong to them. And I'm almost, as I'm folding their laundry, similarly with tidying up the house, I'm almost sending them blessings, you know, like I'm sending them wishes that their lives may be good as I'm doing this service of folding laundry. Angela's saying her daily walk with her dog can be a more devotional practice. Beck says a calmer dinner time, less debating around the dinner table and making more intuitive choices and thinking about food as nourishment and cooking as an offering rather than a chore. Yeah, beautiful. And sometimes, again, I'm very, very conscious of not being a hypocrite here. I don't in any way ever want to represent my life as not being an accurate description of what it is. Like if I think about dinner last night, my whole family, we all had dinner together last night, which was lovely, but there was a lot of bickering and, you know, children behaving in ways that I don't particularly love. I mean, we all sat at the table and ate, but like you can imagine with such a big family, everyone has different opinions. So I don't want to say to you that we have some kind of serene, Ayurvedic, peaceful dinner experience every night, because that is not true. But one thing that I have noticed is that if I set the table in a certain way, it really sets the mood for a different type of meal. So even if I just put a couple of flowers, or I light a candle, or I play relaxing music, that mood, that bhav, that feeling tone does really help with the family stepping into that. Like if I create that as a start, there's less likely going to be lots of bickering between the teenagers or little kids trying to get up and leave the table or what have you. So I don't think we get to completely control it, but I do think that we can set a mood that may help. Tanika is saying she's choosing the ordinary action of getting dressed and presentable as it's something I've neglected. But if I make that devotional, it will be a constant reminder throughout the day of the devotion I made to myself and returning to what I loved as a child, to wear clothes that give me joy and represent who I am. I really love that you're mentioning this, because I actually feel that this is such a big one for so many of us. When I go to India, I spend quite a bit of time in India, and one of the things I notice immediately when I arrive is that everybody is so colorful. The clothing is so colorful, and women wear lots of jewelry, and it's really expressive. And the dress is very, even now where it's not so much traditional dress, like a lot of women don't wear saris anymore, they're wearing quite Western inspired clothing, but there's a lot more color. In fact, I love shopping in India for Western style clothing because it tends to be a lot more colorful. And I noticed when I'm shopping, for example, for my daughter, that there's so many kids' clothes that I love that I would like to wear, but they don't make in my size. And then we come to our adult clothing, and for the most part, it's so boring and gray and dull and similar. It's so, I don't know. It's like we really don't have that kind of creativity through our clothing anymore. And I know I'm massively generalizing here, but I really see it as true. And I think what a beautiful thing if we can, and we all have our own individual style. I'm not in any way telling anyone how to dress, but what a beautiful thing if we can dress up in our own way for the everyday. I work from home. Most of the work I do is on Zoom. I could easily just be wearing a sweatshirt or a hoodie every day. No one would really care or notice, but I care and I notice. And I think it's really beautiful for us to, in the same way that we want to make an effort for our homes, make an effort for ourselves. There's very few, a friend of mine, excuse me, a friend of mine was telling me that she went to an event recently and the dress code was smart casual, and her husband made a big effort and they were dressed up. And when they got there, they felt really embarrassed because they were very overdressed because everyone else was what she called casual. And she felt really disappointed because she actually was looking forward to seeing everybody a bit more dressed up. So in our culture, we don't tend to dress up very much. It's very kind of normalized to just throw on whatever. And again, no judgment, but I love the idea of making an effort in whatever way makes us feel unique and celebrated and special. One of my teachers, Elena Brower, says that she tries to wear a dress every day, and that's her reminder of just being in her feminine flow. And again, I love that, especially for us as yoga teachers, where we get very stuck in wearing active wear or yoga wear. It's really lovely to just make that effort. Shelley's going to get her kids to brush their teeth. I love that. That's Sausha, cleanliness. Sue, present washing the dishes, ongoing practice. And Bree is saying, as a grade 1 teacher, I'm working with taking that deep breath in the moments of chaos, remembering that the work I'm doing is of deep devotion, remembering my work in this world is bhakti. Hats off to school teachers, honestly. I don't know, hats off to you. People often say to me, it's amazing, how do you do it with 5 children? And I'm like, well, I don't actually educate my kids. Someone else does that. And my kids are in classrooms of like 25 students, and then the teacher has them all day long, and she's responsible for educating them. So figure that out. It's incredible, incredible. So yeah, bringing bhakti to that. What a beautiful, beautiful practice. Sita is saying colors have their own energy and she rarely wears black, gray, or dark brown colors. Beautiful. I mean, if black, gray, and dark brown is your choice and that makes you feel great, then 100% go for it. But if it's just default, what a beautiful thing to express ourselves through color and through just personal expression. I think it's so lovely. Okay. We're going to start to wrap up. I wanted to end with a very, very brief just meditation and invocation, but I also want to express my gratitude to all of you for having shared this time with me. I've really enjoyed the last 3 days. I hope you have too. You will have access to the replays and the workbook ongoing. So if you've missed bits or you want to go back, it's all still there for you. And as you know, there is an opportunity to continue studying with me through my Ayurveda Goddess program, which is a lot more of what we've done in the last 3 days, a deeper dive, I guess you could say. And I will be running 3 live Zoom sessions as part of Ayurveda Goddess over the next few weeks. So if you wanted to jump in and join us now, it's a good time because there'll be a live component to the training. Okay, let's just come to settling, gently closing down the eyes, taking a few deep breaths. And I will recite a mantra that is an expression of gratitude between teacher and student, and a wish that our learning may be purposeful, that our learning may be illuminating, and that we may continue in good relationship together. Just listening. Sahana bhavatu, sahana bhunaktu, saha viryam karavavahai, tejasvina vaditamastu, ma vidvisavahai. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free, and may the thoughts, the words, and the actions of my own life contribute in some way to that happiness and to that freedom for all. Namaste. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining me. Have a beautiful weekend. I hope to see many of you again very soon. Take care.